Have you ever imagined browsing through a bookstore with a best-selling author as your guide? Join us as we explore the books that entertain, educate, and inspire through the eyes of the authors who write them on Between the Covers. Hi, I'm Ann Bocock, and welcome to Between the Covers. Recently, I met with Jeff Lindsay, a New York Times best-selling author of the Dexter series. His novels are read worldwide. They've been translated into many languages, and his books are the basis of the Showtime hit series, Dexter. The most recent book is called Dexter's Final Cut, and it was a thrill to catch up with Jeff at the charming Murder on the Beach mystery bookstore in Delray Beach. I think we need a little background, Jeff, for people who may not know Dexter Morgan.
Swine.
Yeah, he works for Miami Police Department,
Yes.
a blood spatter analyst.
Right.
And that's his day job. He's very good at that, seems like a good guy. Until the evening when he becomes a serial killer who kills other serial killers.
Well, not every evening, let's be fair about this. But yes, the idea is that during the day he really is, he's the ideal co-worker. He's the guy that always brings donuts in for the boys and girls. Girls can have donuts nowadays. I think that's wonderful. It goes with getting the vote. But Dexter, every now and then he finds a candidate for that has slipped through the cracks in the system of justice, and that's where he steps in. And there's been some talk that he's a vigilante, and I wanted to put that to rest if I could. Vigilantes do what they do out of a sense of outraged justice. Dexter only kills bad people because that's the way he's been taught, and it works. He kills because he likes to kill. He's a sociopath. He is
a charming sociopath.
Absolutely.
A likable sociopath.
Many of them are.
So tell me, what does this say about society, or what does it say about me, that I really like this guy?
You know, this has been one of the main questions all along. Before the first book was published, I was at a marketing meeting at the publisher in New York, and the only way to describe her is a yenta. She took me aside, and she said, "I shouldn't say, but I have such a crush on Dexter." And it's been that way ever since. I don't know what it says. I think people are taken in by surface appearances, of course. I think they like the idea of evening the score, of somebody who's really bad, but he's bad for our side. And although I originally intended it to be maybe a little bit repugnant, it's turned into just the opposite, which was aesthetically disappointing, but financially very satisfying.
I wish I was a fly on the wall the day you first pitched this idea of a likable sociopath serial killer. Was it your agent you gave this to first?
Well, I was a screenwriter in Hollywood for a few years, so the art of the pitch is something I became familiar with. So what I went in with was a serial killer who works for the cops and only kills other serial killers.
And they liked that.
No, everyone hated it. It took 3.5 or 4 years and 17 agents, and it was rejected by every publisher in New York at least once, some of them twice.
You still have those rejection letters?
No, I don't keep the letters. I'm not even sure how many books I've written. I'm not an archivist for myself. But a couple of the more satisfying stories have been people who called up my agent when it started to take off and said, "Is this the book of it?" And my agent says, "Yes, it is." And there's always a long pause and then a bad word. So very satisfying.
Jeff, when you started, was this Dexter going to be a standalone book?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't imagine why anyone would want to read even one book on a serial killer. And the first book came out, and one of the first reviews said, revitalizes the genre. And I was shocked. I thought, there's a genre? What's wrong with people? I had no idea. And the contract since then has specified that it's Dexter books about a serial killer. And I still don't get it.
And then the magic of television.
Yes.
Not only did these books take off, this is the 7th Dexter book. Dexter's Final Cut is number 7. Showtime picks this up, and Dexter takes on a life of its own.
Yes. There's good and bad to that. You know, I enjoy the show, but I can watch it like it's just a really good TV show because, for the most part, there's no resemblance to the books. They've gone their own way in terms of plot. They've made sociopaths are not warm and cuddly, and they don't suddenly gain human feelings. It doesn't happen. The research I've seen, and there's some disagreement, but I'm leaning towards believing this, is that you are born that way. There is actually a physical difference in the brains of sociopaths that cannot be changed, and you can't sit in prison and go, I'm so sorry, because as we know, they're good actors too. If you're born a sociopath, you can't change. That's what I've learned. But TV likes to play with the idea of him suddenly gaining human feelings.
Speaking of feelings, what does it do to your feelings when your character that you created seems to take on a life of its own outside of the pages of your book?
Sometimes it's unsettling. There have been one or two people who have committed murders and said that they were inspired by Dexter. And I had to do a lot of soul searching on that one, but again, I found this research. You know, a book has never turned someone into a sociopath. And what I now tell people is, my daughter has read all of the Harry Potter books, and she doesn't have magic powers.
In Dexter's Final Cut, Dexter is a consultant for a new police drama that's going to be on television,
Yes.
which I find amusing because you were a consultant on the Showtime show.
Yeah, the idea came to me. Wouldn't it be funny to have him involved in a TV show? Actually, I've been waiting for quite a while to do something with it. And it's not disrespectful in any way. As I said, I worked in the industry for a while. It's just that I thought it would be fun. And it seemed like a natural, and it does go that way. Dexter is surprisingly sucked into that world in Dexter's Final Cut. I wanted to say the title again. I've been working on my plugging. And so it's placed in that milieu, and I think successfully.
Tell me about your experience as the consultant. You also had a walk-on, was it,
Yes.
on the show?
Yes, I was a consultant on the very first one, the pilot. And as I said, having worked in the business, I should have known what consultant means, but I would every now and then say something like, remember, it's funny too, because the books are funny. And at a certain point, they said, we think we found the guy to play Dexter. I said, great, who is it? I said, Michael C. Hall. I don't know the name. What has he done? I said, oh, well, he was on 6 Feet Under. And I thought of Peter Straub. And I said, oh, I guess he's okay, but I've never seen Dexter as blonde. And they said, oh, no, not him, the other one, his brother. And I went, brother, 6 feet? Wait a minute, you mean the short, squat guy with a funny hairline? No, it's impossible. He can't possibly do it. No, find someone else. No question, he's out. And they said, well, we've already signed him. And so now I know what a consultant really is in Hollywood.
So much for being a consultant.
Right.
You have to tell me about the chair, because I've heard stories about the chair.
Well, they are exaggerated at this point, and I can't complain because some of the exaggerations are mine. But season 3, when I decided that they weren't going to ask for their money back, I said, you know, I used to be an actor, and I would love to be able to have just a small walk-on part on the thing, just to show that I support the show with the readers, and You know, it's kind of, you know, James Dickey appears in Deliverance, and that's cool. So I wanted one of those moments. I said, of course, no problem. And I go out, I arrive on the lot. I'm the first 6-line actor in history to have his own trailer. But I thought, okay. And I relax in my trailer till my call comes. And then I go, and when you step onto a sound stage in Los Angeles, you're in bright, bright sunlight. And you step into a largely dark environment. So I'm blinking for a few minutes, trying to see where I am. And over to the right somewhere, I hear, "The Creator is here." And I, what? And someone over there says, "Look, there's the Creator." And my eyes are adjusting, and I start walking through. And as I pass, people are going, "That's the Creator." I'm like, wow. And I get over to where they're actually doing a scene, and there's a camera, and there's only one chair. So I'm standing there, and a guy jumps up and says, "Oh, take my chair." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And so I'm sitting in the chair, and we're talking for a minute. I said, "So what do you do on this show?" And he said, "I'm the director." I said, "My God, I can't take your chair. Here, take it." No, I'm just the director. You are the creator." So it was, the only downside was I spent the next 3 weeks forgiving people. But other than that, it was quite an experience.
You are the creator,
Yeah.
and you have a chair that says the creator. I love it. You mentioned humor. Your books are humorous. I think that's why I love them so much. I'm not sure the television version got that.
I don't think so. It's the one thing I really regretted about the TV show, at least the first 3 or 4 seasons, is that they didn't. And I kept saying when we were shooting the pilot, don't forget, you know. But it's something, you know, in a way, it's a form of being a sociopath. You're born with it or you're not. And if they didn't have it, they're not going to bring in comedy writers to joke up the scripts.
Not only does Dexter have a sense of humor, but he has a code of ethics that is explained in the book. When you are inside the mind of a serial killer, as you have been in 7 books, does it help to have both the code of ethics and the sense of humor to write this? It
does. The sense of humor is his. The code of ethics is really implied. Instilled. It's a list that he's memorized. His stepfather, his adoptive father, Harry, taught him these rules. So Dexter is amoral and without empathy or anything else, but the rules work. And Harry impressed on him when he was young, this is the way it works. The sense of humor is his. I like to compare him to, boy, if I get this wrong, you'll get mail. I think it's Alex de Tocqueville, a French man in the 1800s visited America and wrote back these funny letters about how crazy and absurd the Americans were. And Dexter is, in the same way, a stranger in a strange land, making, you know, humorous remarks as an outsider, looking in on human beings.
What's the challenge of developing a character that displays so little emotion, or can't?
The real challenge, actually, and I'll never say something like this again, but it was for Michael C. Hall, to play a character who is displaying emotion but not feeling it and understanding that he's supposed to display it and then displaying, and it's very complex as an actor. As a writer, I just cheat a little bit, and Dexter usually comments, "Well, I know I should have felt sorry about that, but I don't."
But he's good enough now to understand what he should be doing.
Yes, one of his co-workers, Vince Masuoka, who's awkward as opposed to sociopathic, has a horrible laugh. And Vince always gives this weird laugh, and Dexter thinks to himself, my fake laugh is much better than his fake laugh.
Miami is also a character in your book,
yes,
an integral part of the book. South
yes.
Florida, but Miami specifically.
Yes.
You grew up in Miami.
I did.
You didn't grow up in this Miami.
No. I've lived in this Miami, but the one I grew up in is very different. Some of my very best friends from childhood and school were first wave Cubans, exiles. And so I don't have any problem with multiculturalism or going in and having to order in Spanish. But now that it seems to have spread, I don't speak Creole or Portuguese, and it's gotten much more complicated. And even Cuban American friends from my childhood are going, I can't take it anymore, and moving north. It's very different. It's a world city now. When I grew up, it was really a small city that was part Caribeño and part Deep South.
What do you miss about those days?
I miss the way I grew up, which was go outside, don't come back till dinner, which if you do that with your kids nowadays, you should be arrested and put in jail. It was actually about 10 years ago, we visited one of the last spoil islands in Biscayne Bay we used to camp out on. And there was some kind of altar built there with a goat's head on it. And, you know, I spent nights camping out there and catching breakfast, and it's not the same city. There's good sides to that. I don't want to just say it's all, weird or dangerous. It's not. It's a wonderful city. It's vibrant. It's alive. But it's a little bit more dangerous, too.
It's certainly not the same for you as it is for your 3 children.
No. Not at all. And in fact, I would not send them outside without an armed guard.
What's more challenging, trying to keep on the New York Times bestseller list or parenting teenagers?
Oh, there's no question about it. Lots of people make the New York Times bestseller list, but nobody has ever successfully parented a teenager. It can't be done. It's like trying to herd cats. And that's just with one teenager. It's an absurd task and totally thankless. There's a great new book. Oh, I don't know if it's great. I haven't read it. The title is great. It's called Parenting. Help me out if you know the title. Something about all joy and no fun.
Yes. I think we're close.
Yes.
And that's true.
It is true. And I have great joy with all of them. One of them is going for a PhD in genetics, which she does things I can't even pronounce. Another one is playing Carnegie Hall this spring as principal horn player of an orchestra. Another just got all-state chorus. I mean, great joy. But then you try to say, I'm so proud of you. It's like, Dad, you're embarrassing me. Get your hand off me. Dad, stop it, Dad. You smell bad. Ooh, you've got coffee breath. The bestseller list is easy.
I don't know, with that track record, I think maybe you should write a parenting book next.
One of my first paid regular jobs was writing a parenting column. And I enjoyed the heck out of it. For 5 years.
You answered questions?
No, it was even better than that. I got to write what I wanted. It was called Fatherhood. And my wife was hired to produce the evening news for Fox. And so she would leave at noon and come home after midnight. And that left me as the sole caregiver for a couple of little girls. So the columns are things like going with the oldest to buy her first bra, which she thought was hilarious, and I wanted to die. So for a couple of years I did that, and I say it was semi-syndicated. It was in 5 papers at the peak, but it was wonderful fun.
And in the books, Dexter is parenting.
Yes.
Which is hard to get you to wrap your head around, a sociopath serial killer who goes home and he's dad.
It grew out of my experience that no matter what you do with your life and no matter who you are to everyone else, you get home and you're still the big jerk at the end of the table at dinner. And I thought it was kind of funny to put Dexter in that context, He barely washes the blood off. And he disposes of the body parts, and now he has to change a diaper.
Mm-hmm. And he also has a teenager who gives snarky remarks and treats her father like all other teenage girls do.
In the book I'm working on now, as a matter of fact, there's a thing where he tries to imagine what moments of joy have I got out of this, and the best he can come up with is the teenager once threw her shoes at him, and only one of them hit him.
You are in such good company with all of the authors that we have in Florida.
Thank you. And I want to say it's great to be between the covers with you, too.
Oh, thank you for being between the covers. Florida is home to so many wonderful mystery writers
Yes.
and thriller writers. Do they gravitate to Florida because of the weather, or do you think there's just so many stories here that there's no end to it?
There's something fantastically attractive about it, about the idea of beautiful sunset, flock of flamingos flying past the palm trees, and horribly butchered dead bodies lying at the foot of the palm tree.
Beautifully said.
And I don't know, I do it because this is where I'm from, and I don't think I could set something in Milwaukee because I've never been there. But the public seems to like it. If nobody was buying the books, we wouldn't be writing them either. I'd move to Milwaukee.
I have in my mind that there's just this wonderful fraternity of mystery writers that love each other and talk to each other all the time. Yes, no?
It's mostly true, believe it or not. I've been all over the world with this, and I've met one guy who was a dork, a total jerk. And it turned out that didn't count because he was a stand-up comic first. But every murder mystery writer that I can think of that I've known, except for him, turns out to be a really nice person. There are people whose books I can't read. They're so grotesque. They're talking about mutilating children's genitals and chopping them into tiny pieces. And I go, how do you write this? And here's this sweet middle-aged woman who's just happy, nice. She has kids. She's the nicest person you could possibly know. And she writes these things. I'm not one to talk, maybe, but...
Do you have other characters, obviously you do, that are spinning around in your head right now? And any chance we'll have a female version of Dexter? Or do men just make better evil characters?
No, not at all. I don't think I'm breaking any news when I say women can be just as evil, but it's usually in a different way. And speaking from the research on the subject, there are very, very few female serial killers. 99 times out of 100, they're men. Women tend to go about things another way, and the sociopathic women like to control and manipulate people into doing things that hurt them or embarrass them. I'm not saying that's not fun, but it does tend to be something that women sociopaths do instead of committing murder.
You're right. The only one I can think of is the one years ago in Florida,
yes,
on I-95.
She's the only one I can think of, too.
I'm fascinated by the process of writing. If you don't mind me getting into your head for just
Good
a
luck.
moment. Are you ritualistic? Do you write every day? How does it work?
I write every day. I go to the same place at the same time, and that's important. And it's my job. But every writer has to find what works for them. And bizarrely enough, what works for me is to write when I first get up. Because maybe I'm overeducated, but I find that if I sit down fully alert and all focus is on what I'm doing, I get in my own way and I'll go, oh, what a stupid, everybody starts with the. There's got to be a better word, the, the, shh, and I can't do it. But if I'm half asleep, I just sit down and I write away and I get 5 or 10 pages, and later in the day I look at it and correct the spelling and grammar and go, oh, great, okay, I'm done.
I always feel like this is an insulting question to ask a writer, but do you always know where you're going?
Yeah, but it's never there when I get there. That's, every writer doesn't do this. I have to write from an outline, a beginning, middle, and end, and know where I'm going, but it almost always changes.
And that first sentence, how important is that?
It's important. Oddly enough or not, a lot of the time, if that's what you start with, or you go, this is a great first sentence, by the time you're done, you throw it away anyway, because it's wrong or it's not necessary. You've come up with a better one. But it always feels really good to have a dynamite opening sentence.
What was the road like for you getting here? Because you're at the top now.
Well, the traffic was bad, but boy, wow, I'm really thrilled to know that I am at the top. My kids certainly wouldn't let me know that. You know, it was a little bit like a highlight film of all the bad things that can happen to a writer. And when I said before there are lots of agents and rejection and all, that's not an exaggeration. The agent I had at the time wanted me to concentrate on ghostwriting. And I showed her a few chapters of Dexter in the outline, and she said, no, it's creepy. Nobody wants to read this. I changed agents many times and finally got a really young, eager, hungry, up-and-coming guy to represent it. And he said, just you have to make this one change in the ending. I said, I can't. And we fought about it and finally said, all right, if you can sell it. He said, I can if you make that change. I changed it. And I don't hear from him for 6 weeks. And then I get a registered letter saying, for personal reasons, I can no longer be in the agent business right now. And that was it. So that was the last agent, I thought. And luckily, my wife got on the phone, and she's connected to one of the many sub-mafias in publishing. And she found someone, and we submitted it. And I thought it was a joke when I got his letter. He said he'd be honored to represent it. I thought, my mother wrote it to make me feel better. But when I met with him the first time, he said, I think this is a wonderful book. I'd be proud to represent it. There's just one small change I want you to make. And I go, oh, here we go again. What? He said, would you think about, and he said the change that I had made for the other agent, he wanted me to change back to the way I'd had it originally. So I went, this is my guy. Where do I sign?
Will we see more of Dexter Morgan in the future? Because you have all the power. I mean, there might be a part of you that would like to get rid of him.
Yeah, every day. I mean, you definitely have mixed feelings about it. The thing is, all I ever wanted as a writer was to have a series. And now I've got it, and yeah, I get tired of it. There are times I'd like to bash him on the head with a brick and leave him in Biscayne Bay wired to a nice storm anchor. But yes, I'm working on at least one more book. I'm working with Marvel Comics now on 2 separate 5-issue series that are actually graphic novels. They're not comic books at all.
Sounds much better as
yes,
a graphic
I know.
novel.
I grew up on Marvel Comics. They're comics, and I'm proud of it. I love them.
And the graphic novel industry is huge.
Yes, and worldwide. And to see what a really talented comic book artist can do with them really adds another dimension for me. So it's fun.
So yes, Dexter Morgan will be back.
He'll write again.
Jeff, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure entirely. Thank you.
It was such a pleasure to meet Jeff Lindsay, author of the Dexter series. He truly is an inspiration, and we really appreciate him taking the time to entertain us. I'm Ann Bocock, and you're watching Between the Covers.